Hello everyone, and welcome to this next episode of the Tech Partner, RICS Tech Partner video series. My name is Andrew Knight and I work within the Profession Directorate of RICS looking at thought leadership, regulation and standards, and my role is to look at the effect of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. We're a professional body with over 130,000 members worldwide, working right across the property life cycle, and the effects of data and tech are clearly hugely profound for us. And today I'm really happy to have Alex and David from BOOMPower joining me, so please do join me. Alex, David.
Hi, Andrew.
Hi both. Well, I always like to start these calls rather than delving into the bits and bytes, but to talk about the people. And so I'm really sort of keen to hear about your backstories, your experience, and why you started BOOMPower.
Personally, I was working for a large bureaucratic government organisation over here in Australia, probably around 10 years ago, and I'd spent lots of time, 3 years, setting up an energy services company and energy performance contracting as part of that organisation. Something that should have taken 6 to 12 months, and the nature of the beast meant that it went on for far too long. Finally signed the heads of agreement, and I decided that I had enough, and I met one of our other business partners, Tosh, and I decided that it was probably a good time to go out and help other people to do the same thing, but in a far shorter time. I think we always set out with the idea that software would enable us to do things far more quickly, and luckily we were able to bring on David not too many years later.
And how about you, David?
Yeah, I mean, I have a bit of a mixed background. I originally thought I'd be a neuroscientist. I did a PhD in neuroscience at a medical research institute here in Australia, and in a sort of bit of procrastination, I picked up this hobby in energy efficiency and solar and climate change. I became quite passionate about rather than my thesis, obviously. And I ended up actually after that picking up a job for a UK-based NGO called the Climate Group, based in London, that you might be familiar with. And yeah, that would have been close to 10 years ago now as well, maybe 8 years ago. And that's about the time I met Alex and Tosh when they were building, this new business. And we got to know each other and kind of got coffee in here and there. And the problem they had is, they've got the domain experience and get projects off the ground. But dealing with clients that, consultants can, work across portfolios of 10 or 20 properties or something like that. But starting to deal with customers that have hundreds of properties and they're just small properties, they're not shopping centers. You really needed to be very clever about how you handle data, about building software tools and really managing yourself effectively. So I'm not a software developer by training, but I am an engineer and kind of hacked my way around figuring out how to deal with this data. I was used to dealing with big data sets recorded from brains, and so instead I turned around, well, I'll deal with data from houses and rooftops and that sort of thing, and try and apply that so that we could tackle climate change really, so that you could do large scale retrofits at scale, and like Alex said, do them quickly, because that's really what it's all about.
Indeed. So I mean, to summarize for our viewers, what's the Boom platform used for, to cut to the chase and really kind of get down to the fundamental value it delivers? What does it do?
The initial use case is really helping asset managers with large, complex property portfolios. So, as David said, energy retrofit programs tended to make a lot of assumptions, and even today, in a lot of cases, there's a lot of assumptions made about how to go about them and what's going to be the best product or best solution or service. And so the Boom platform, in the first instance, is really to be able to gather all the data succinctly and analyze that in an automated way. So data from smart meters or from bills or metering devices, to automate the analysis of those, to create business cases, generate options so that those asset managers could make decisions really quickly about where should they be spending their money, and where are the best financial benefits and even emission reductions going to be across that portfolio. And then once the decisions are made, running competitive procurement through the platform, and then monitoring and managing the impacts of those, so they can inform what to do in future. So really that energy management piece at the end. So I guess that's it in a snapshot.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and you mentioned some of them obviously are quite sizable portfolios. I mean, who are some of your clients and partners, either sort of public, private sector? What are the kind of portfolios that they're managing?
we initially started out in social housing, actually, and so there were, the largest ones in Australia are covering 2 of the largest housing associations in Australia, which compared to UK standards, are probably medium, probably small from my memory, and around 11,000 properties, and each, and so we initially built it on the back of that market. However, nowadays the platform deals with a whole range of commercial and industrial types of properties, particularly when it comes to solar, where Australia, rooftop solar in Australia has really taken off over the last 10 years, and we now have the cheapest prices in the world. So that particular product and batteries is has really been the key driver, solar in particular, but now batteries are becoming increasingly popular, if not quite financially viable yet. Yeah. They've certainly captured the public imagination in Australia anyway.
And obviously data availability is obviously key. I mean, what sort of data are you able to use day to day in this building and energy space, and what are the challenges around getting some of it?
I'll leave that to you if you like, Dave.
Sure thing. I guess the challenge for us is, we've had clients who literally have nothing except for addresses, and we have to make decisions on that basis. So, maybe we can look at things on Google Earth and satellite and aerial imagery, and there's some fantastic commercial providers that have really high resolution imagery. But otherwise, that's it. And we're asked, well, what should we do in terms of solar or whatever else it might be? But often that's just driven by there's a government incentive or a grant or something, and they've just got to do something and they've got to do it quickly. I'm sure that's very familiar. The ideal, of course, is that you can actually get on site, pandemic notwithstanding, do things like take photos of switchboards, see, what kind of condition they're in, if they could accommodate, extra circuits for solar and for heat pumps, taking photos of roofs if they're something heritage and a little bit fragile or a little bit more mass market, what kind of heating and cooling system you have, what kind of hot water boiler you have. If you can capture that data, then you've captured the majority of the fixed appliance kind of energy use for that property, as well as a little bit of information about the thermal envelope. So we've managed to convince a few clients to take that more comprehensive route, or at least have the ambitions, if not actually deliver. But we have to accommodate the full spectrum, I guess, is the point, from no data and best practice assumptions to we have smart meter data. We know what you're using every half an hour. We know about the tenancies and the construction of the property, and we can tailor a solution for that. So, our dream, of course, is we know exactly what appliances are installed, when they're installed, and how much energy they use every 5 minutes. That's the dream. We never get there, of course, but in Victoria, at least, we do have smart meters, and increasingly across Australia and worldwide, we should get some access to that data. But as much as anything, we just get hindered by the practicalities of data governance and getting access to and getting permissions, or lack of standardizations between jurisdictions. Who owns the data? As much as anything, that's what kind of gets in our way, rather than the data not existing in the first place.
It's funny, isn't it? It's such a sort of similar story in so many jurisdictions that the data sometimes either doesn't exist, or if it does exist, there are these almost sort of irrational barriers about why you can't get hold of it, where it's, quote, owned by somebody, when you think, well, doesn't the householder have, or it is a very strange situation that the data can be available but doesn't flow around in a way that makes it work. I mean, are you seeing a sense that portfolio owners are recognizing they do need more structured, consistent data on the assets they have? Are they waking up to the fact that if all they have is a set of addresses, it doesn't really give them much sort of power to actually affect change? Yeah.
On the social housing space, in some jurisdictions there is a big stick in terms of they're required to have an asset management system, so a managed database that collects information, and that'll often be, is a security door, are the locks in good condition, is there asbestos, the planning of what am I going to have to spend over the next 50 years to maintain this property. So pretty much all that in the world of what surveyors would do, quantity surveyors to keep track of these assets. But then energy just gets treated as a completely different problem. And we're working with some of the suppliers of these platforms to integrate the thinking there a little bit more. But I guess getting to the core of your question, whether they really believe that it's important and crucial to their business to collect and manage that data versus being forced to do it is kind of an open question, I think.
I think on the ESG side, Andrew, I mean, clearly, I totally agree with David in that the big stick is the thing that tends to get the most action, and the ESG driver, I think globally, particularly in terms of financiers wanting to see and be able to verify the impacts on the environment and social in particular, but also governance. Being able to verify that through data is actually going to be the big driver of the next 10 years. Because at the moment, all of those organisations just don't have a handle on the data behind it. They make a whole lot of we're going to be net zero by 2030 claims, whereas actually verifying it, that's part of one of the reasons we're really excited over the next few years is we're really focused on the data and enabling people to actually get to net zero with tangible projects. It's, you can talk about it all you like, but
exactly. I mean, on that broader theme, I mean, how are you working with the kind of broader energy transition in Australia? What sort of policies are in place? Because obviously there's that, all the rhetoric, but what are the actual policies that are helping you, or dare I say, hindering you in terms of making some of these transitions happen?
Ironically, I think the federal government, it's probably general knowledge in the UK about the Australian federal government and the push against any sort of emissions targets and all the rest of it. And ironically, we've had that for what, seven or 8 years, and that actually seems to have pushed the general public and therefore also businesses towards rooftop solar. When you would think that Australia would be far more effective with large utility scale solar farms across the entire outback. It's coming, and it's certainly it's really taken off in the last 2 or 3 years on that side. But because of the, I think it's literally been a pushback from the general public onto the politicians to say, well, if you're not going to do it, then we're going to do it ourselves, and that's really driven, the pricing of solar panels. Yes, the pricing of systems on rooftops to the point where it's almost a no-brainer in 18 situations. Not quite a no-brainer. You want to size it properly.
And are there any particular new initiatives or new energy products? I mean, you mentioned batteries a bit earlier. I mean, are you seeing some step changes, some additional technology coming out that you're excited about?
Lots. Go ahead, David. Why do you want me to go?
Sorry. I was just going to add, I can drone on about the technology all day, but I guess the frustrating thing Victoria has been, or Australia more generally, is the thermal envelope really gets neglected compared to much of the world. There was a controversial scheme again about 10 years ago, 15 years ago now, in the installation space where it was a little bit rushed, and there are unfortunately some deaths. And ever since, that sector, no one dares, mention insulation, and that's a great shame, of course. But yeah, in the new energy space, there's lots of opportunities, around, batteries and, heating and cooling upgrades. I'm really excited about some of the new, technologies for doing hot water systems for apartments. Whereas before, spoilers would have always been the default. If you wanted something else, it would be, quite a premium.
I'm really passionate about at the moment, Andrew, is the different types of batteries. You know, different battery chemicals for
the property, and we can
come back to David is very passionate about
indeed.
come to that. But yeah, we're beginning to see that there are significant advantages to certain battery chemicals, and so the world has been talking about lithium ion for a few years now, whereas there are chemicals, batteries that are 25, 30 years old that still have an application, but actually haven't been applied as yet in great numbers. So we're actually really excited about being able to model those and work with those companies to speed up the ability of them to sell those products into the right use cases. Which is probably preempting one of your questions later on about the future of Boom. But we'll back about hot water because he's very passionate about the hot water.
Well, indeed, maybe we'll move on to that. About obviously we've talked a lot about what you're doing in Australia. What are your ambitions to use this platform in other jurisdictions, Alex?
Well, actually, we were part of an accelerator last year run by Second Century Ventures called the RICS program, so National Association of Realtors in the US, and with the idea that we definitely are looking at identifying exactly which countries would be next. The obvious one for us, being in Australia, is New Zealand, and we are very close to having a partner over there that would have the exclusive right to using Boom to roll it out with our support. And so, because it's a relatively small market, nice easy start for us outside of Australia, and then definitely thinking the UK and the US are the most obvious places for us to go next. All being that the US, we'd be very careful about exactly where we target and which states or even which regions within states that we were to start out, given the size of the market, complexity of the market.
Indeed. Thanks, Alex. David, I know you and I were talking about heat pumps particularly and pricing compared to gas. I don't know whether you want to carry on with that particular piece, because it was, as you mentioned, irrespective of some of the kind of geopolitical shifting of gas prices at the moment, that they were competitive in pricing. Are there any other kind of energy products or initiatives that you see as being really on the cusp of being very, very practical and able to be implemented?
Yeah, I think battery storage is the really big one. Stationary, behind the meter battery storage is the other big one everyone talks about. But it's really hard to say, is it going to be like solar 10 years ago, where the price will go down tenfold and really have universal adoption? But it could go the other way, where it really gets soaked up by, the EV space, for example. You could argue it's much more valuable to have lithium batteries, in electric vehicles rather than, behind everyone's house. And so are these batteries going to be, inside everyone's, carports attached to their house? Are they going to be more neighborhood scale, where they might be, on the power post outside, each building, maybe serving an apartment block or a group? And that's what we have to kind of figure out, I guess, how to, compare all these scenarios, both physical, where things are connected electrically, but also who's paying for what, and working across jurisdictions where who pays for what is not a straightforward thing to answer.
So what are the most important things you're working on at the moment, and how are you making that happen? What are your plans in terms of enhancing the platform and looking at perhaps other data sources?
Maybe I'll talk about it from a sort of sales growth point of view, and David can talk about the product. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll be a bit more pie in the sky probably.
Well, depends. So I mean, from a growth point of view, we're 2022 is really focusing on beyond those asset managers' property portfolios. We have increasingly uptake from our consultants, energy brokers, sort of valuation companies, really, a whole range of people within the built environment space who already have customers, large volumes of customers, and already have that face-to-face interaction, property inspections or data yeah, in a lot of cases, they already have really valuable data that actually just needs a few small tweaks and the software to enable them to do it at scale, without having to use, bolt on 5 different pieces of software or be using spreadsheets or whatever. And so that's really the next 12 months is those, but also the product companies themselves, where some of them struggle to be able to justify their own products because they're so focused on the hardware that the software that enables them to justify it and to provide the full service gets neglected. So Boom provides that service, then yeah, they're very happy to take that up rather than trying to build it from scratch. And that's certainly focus.
David, how about your perspective?
Yeah, I guess I get excited whenever we get access to a new sort of source of data that we can use to replace someone going around with an iPad, basically, or doing spreadsheets or chasing someone. It's probably a very familiar sort of pattern. And a couple of examples of that, there's a government-owned business in aerospace. They use satellite imagery that they apply various AI approaches to pick up things like building footprints. So they have a polygon of building footprint for notionally every building in Australia, and not just a 2D outline. They'll tell you whether it already has solar panels. They'll tell you if a tree is shading that rooftop. There's other companies doing things with LiDAR where they can actually pick up within a few centimeters exactly which way your roof's facing, and therefore what the solar potential is. So if I had access to that data and the tools and the algorithms to analyze that, the dream, right? We joked about I only get access to the address data. Well, maybe that's what, right? So that's one side of it. And then the other is with things like smart meters and even things like the new iPad, which has the little LiDAR sensor. The idea of perhaps I could just walk around a building, scan the walls, come up with a 3D model, and with a little bit of clever thinking and no doubt some assumptions, say, well, this is how big the building is, this is how the glazing works, maybe I know a little bit about the installation, I can give you a good idea of what this, the energy costs are for this building, and therefore, what it'll take to retrofit it and make it more efficient, make it climate safe, more than 1.5 degree, global warming sort of world. Overcoming this need for people to collect a lot of data, which is just laborious, and we love customers who are really keen to organize it and to get it and to keep it updated. But if we can get it for free, with other kind of approaches, with AI and with aerial imagery and with this new technology, then I think it'll really allow us things to take off and scale up much more quickly.
And that's what gets me really excited, Andrew. Sorry, but
sorry, carry on, Alex.
That's what gets me really excited, is because those sorts of products that David is talking about, a lot of our customers, our upcoming customers in particular, are already out there, and in some cases already using those technologies. So the partnerships, and being able to help each other, not only obviously Boom is software as a service, and therefore it provides that service, but they provide really valuable insights for us so that we can make their lives easier, and collectively, be able to make this energy transition to clean energy over the next 30 years, which is accelerating all the time. Yeah. We can do it with a whole range of different partners, and that's where I get very excited, as you can probably tell.
So I mean, is that almost your vision, to use that overused word, of perhaps how Boom will evolve over the next few years? Is these other kind of data sources, other kind of physical ways of doing things, and almost augmenting the kind of partnerships you can have, doing the perhaps deeper things with some of your asset managers?
Certainly, yeah. In terms of the marketplace, you think of, as I say, those either intermediaries or product companies, they all add value to property teams. And so by supporting new technologies to be available to the property teams, and then by providing those also to a whole range of different companies, like valuation companies or whatever, brokers, that means that the acceleration continues, and all three parties are getting value from using the platform, and so we get our, obviously we get our goal and our vision, which is to accelerate the energy market transition to clean energy, and by helping all three parties. It's go ahead, David.
Yeah, I mean, my vision really is, there's so much we can do with rooftop solar or heating and cooling or whatever it is, but it's just surfacing those opportunities is kind of what we're all about. People could talk about great R&D leaps, and I'm as excited as anyone else about them. But often people just don't realize, what they can do, and even if they do realize what they can do, they don't have the time or energy or expertise to deliver it. So this idea of just kind of surfacing off-the-shelf solutions, but maybe not things that everyone knows about and don't make sense for every property. Sunny places, cold places, hot places, places with a rooftop, places where you don't pay the energy bills or you've got a landlord. How do we simplify all those decisions and funnel that data through in a seamless kind of way? People are usually quite quick to make decisions. If you say, well, it'll cost you no more than what you're doing at the moment, why wouldn't you do it? Yeah. That's kind of where we need to get to, I think. It's lovely to have government programs, but we've batted at it just long enough to realize we can't bank on it indefinitely and certainly across every market. Whereas if we can make it clear that it costs less to run, or it will be safer for your tenants or for yourself, and less risky in the long run, then people will go ahead and do it.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's heartening to hear that you're making such progress, because the scale of this issue in terms of the number of properties, as you know, is huge, and we need to be able to deliver sensible, practical solutions at scale to address this, don't we? It's a huge challenge, but it's been fascinating to hear the progress you're making. Well, this has been great, and I look forward to talking to you perhaps later this year and see how the landscape's changing in the right direction, hopefully. So, David, Alex, thanks for your time. It's been great to talk.
Thanks for having us, Andy.